Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a chat about the PLZ83. One of the great things about doing these winter and summer events is, for me, I use it as an opportunity to kind of spade vehicles and, well, have a bit of fun with them. And the PLZ83 was one of those that we ended up getting spaded. The vehicle itself is a pretty standard SPH in the Chinese tech tree. It's at a BR where it can be seen as useful. It generally works pretty well, but compared to a lot of the other competition that's around the place, it doesn't really stack up. If you compare it to the M109A1, for example, the M109A1 is pretty much better in nearly every way, but still the PLZ does alright, at least when it comes to the stats that I had in it, and also just the general feel of it. Did it feel as good as the M109? No, but should it go down in BR because of that? Probably not either, because we were able to fulfill kind of the same role as the M109 and had a decent time with it. So, what is the PLZ83 and why is it, a little bit of fun? And why is it now that SPHs are a lot more fun than they were before? Well, number one is the overpressure changes, and also just general HE changes and how they interact with armor, and, to be honest, a lot of BR changes. Because of BR decompression, you don't actually go up against as many heavies as you used to in vehicles like this, so your main issues are going to be stuff like Tiger 2s, for example, and also other vehicles like that. If you come up against Tiger 1s, Panthers or Shermans or, any type of vehicle like that, you're able to just kind of shoot them in the front and annihilate them. The main issue is going to be stuff like T-34s, T-26E5s, T-26E1s, which do have a weak spot on the top of them, so at least you can pop them, but a lot of them don't, and that can be kind of annoying. But against a lot of the vehicles that are around this BR, the PLZ83 can look at them and just bonk them. And if you decide to sit it on a flank, which you can do with its pretty mobile chassis, you can bonk people, go back into cover, and then just kind of do it again. The reload rate on this thing is a little bit long, which means that it can be a little bit cumbersome. You can't take straight fights with this thing, even though it can tank a shell, surprisingly, because of the way that its crew's situated, and because of the fact it has pretty much no armor on the turret. The round will just go straight through and not explode, which is quite nice. If you are going to shoot this thing, by the way, shoot it on the right-hand side of the turret, because that's where the first stage ammo stowage is. So you'll be able to take out that, and also the gunner and loader, meaning that it can't fire back straight away, and there is a chance that it will explode. The ammunition is in two pieces, with the charges on the top of it, so you want to aim for the higher part of the right-hand side of the turret, and you'll be able to pop it pretty easily if you want to destroy this thing. It does have a lot of little internal pieces of armor in the hull, which a lot of rounds will get stuck on, especially if you shoot for the engine, which is why I think it's very important to shoot for the turret instead in this thing. And if you have an autocannon, of course you can just bonk it on the turret. One of the things about the PLZ though, and something that kind of crucifies some of the higher end SPHs, is stuff like autocannon stuff, like light tanks with stuff like that. The Marder, for example, was really tough to deal with when I was spading stuff like the Type 75, but nowadays the Marder is a lot higher in BR, along with a lot of the other autocannon light tanks which are around the place. So that means there's a little bit of breathing room for stuff like the PLZ, where instead of facing a lot of these types of vehicles, instead what you do is you face a lot of medium tanks and standard light tanks and also heavy tanks, which are a lot easier to deal with. You just have to learn where their weak spots are in terms of the HE, and you also have to learn basic map positions to be able to sit on the flank of them and not just go for caps, because you'll just get annihilated. So you do have a HE shell. The HE shell is not as good as some of the other ones that are around, but it does the job. It has nearly 6 kilos of explosive mass, and a lot of the time you can just shoot people in the center and they'll overpressure the crew behind. You do also have the HEVT shell, which is pretty nice to see, and also is one of those things which I've seen a lot of people use recently. It's the standard VT that all of these howitzers have, so it gets triggered from below. So you can technically fire it above vehicles and pop them, or fire it at planes and pop them, but it's not the easiest thing to do. And it's much better if you're dealing with planes, just use the 12.7mm. I don't think the targeting speed is fast enough on this 152 to be able to, get it onto planes, then go from there. It does have the elevation, not as good as some other vehicles, but once again, completely fine. So, even though this vehicle does not stack up in all of the metrics, compared to a bunch of the other standard SPHs around these BRs, it is slightly weaker in every way. It's still very fun, and it's still one of those which it's just enjoyable kind of wandering into a battle with this thing as a first spawn, because you cannot use this as a second or third spawn, by the way. So if you're going to use this, you have to use it as a first spawn, because it's very susceptible to cast, and also it has to be in a defensive position before you use it, otherwise you're just going to get kind of hammered. So just understand that. You have to use it as a first spawn. But in terms of lineup, it doesn't actually have a bad one. You have the SU-100, which you can bring along as another tank destroyer. You have the IS-2, of course, which got up BR'd. And then also you have stuff like the Type 63, if you want to kind of roll with that too. It's a nice little change from the banger lineup that the Chinese have at 5.7, because you can bring along not just the TU2S, which is at 5.3, but you can also bring along the LA9. And the LA9, surprisingly, is pretty good in ground forces because of the penetration of the 23mm it has. You can go through the top of stuff like Panthers and just kind of annihilate them by themselves, and it's really cool. So the lineup for the PLZ83 is quite good. I suppose the only question is, do you actually replace any of those components with the PLZ83? And I think on certain maps, yeah, I honestly think it's not a bad idea to do. The muzzle velocity is not the best on the 152, but it's good enough. It's one of those things you get used to. The optics themselves are once again fine. They're not the best in the business, but they are better than a few of the other SPHs that we have in the game, which is a pretty positive thing. And overall, I've just had a great time in this. I don't know whether it's just because of the fundamental changes they made to SPHs over the period of time. That might be it, because this used to be a type of vehicle that I would dread playing. But through looking at stats, and then also just through looking at how it felt playing it, it was just incredibly fun popping Panthers, popping Tigers, popping Shermans, and then only slight frustrations when facing some heavies, because I knew if I died, well, I could always bang a rang in the IS-2, or I could always use the LA-9 or the TU-2 to be able to get back at things. So it was a good start to the lineup, and a good place to have fun with it. Without the lineup, would this be as fun? Definitely not. There is no way that this type of vehicle would be fun if it was just by itself, but as a piece to the puzzle of this, I think it's quite nice. And that's why I had a good time. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.